I'll try it again. The live thing anyway. Some other time. I will just exit out. And we'll keep it clean anyway, just in case it is in the background. But from what I see, it's not live streaming.
All right.
Either way, welcome to the podcast. I thought it'd be great to have you on. For those that don't know our guest, Jeremy Evans, he is a good friend of mine from way back in the day, our barn days. We'll probably talk about that much later, but I thought you'd be a great guest just because of you have a really interesting career. And I know with the combination of just being a writer, being an actor, Hollywood in general, which I know very little about, but improv and doing stand-up comedy, that takes quite a bit of resilience. So that's kind of what the theme is with the podcast, is a little bit of resilience, but also just letting people know about the variety of careers that are out there. And I know you've got a pretty exciting project that you're working on right now. So I think that probably the best place to start is with the project. So if you want to do a basic intro and just tell us about what you're working on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. The project is it's a film I want to do here. The next film I'm doing is called The Legacy. So we just did a movie called Andy Somebody, and that is, we signed 3 different distribution deals. One for North America, one for Africa and the surrounding islands, and one that's just worldwide. The project, though, that I'm working on currently, The Legacy, it's like a father-son comedy. If you like Step Brothers, meets like an episode of The Office. So we're basically a fictional bobblehead sports doll business, father-son business in Central Illinois. And we basically, my dad's trying to fire me, and I've got to save the company and come up with some drastic solution. And I won't spoil it for anybody, but yeah, it's just it's a fun little comedy about trying to beat the big bobblehead distributor up in Chicago, and that's what it's about.
Well, I think I got pretty excited about the project just because, you know, as you mentioned, it's Central Illinois, and there's not a lot of films that I'm aware of besides like The Informant with Matt Damon and what was it, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. They mentioned Decatur, but not a lot of Central Illinois movies.
They said that they were going to vacation in Decatur, which I thought was great because they're 3 hours. Jesus, I'll get one of the threes right. 3 hours up the road, which is the shortest vacation ever.
Yeah, so the whole concept of having it here and almost like an underdog story, but then the combination of, like you said, Step Brothers and The Office, and this way that's filmed, is that similar to the last project with Andy Somebody?
No. Andy Somebody, I didn't direct Andy Somebody. Are you talking stylistically, or are you just talking,
Yeah, stylistically.
Okay, yeah. So The Office, it's, you know, how like in The Office, so I would say about 70% of The Legacy takes place inside the office. So it's kind of like that style of humor, what's called a contained script, to keep the budget low because we're doing a low budget film, $500,000. So that's where the Office kind of humor comes in. And yeah, so it's, you know, handheld. Where Andy Somebody wasn't handheld, a lot of it was what's called on stilts. So, you know, you roll the camera in and out, things like that. This will be a lot of handheld, not the quick push-ins, and we won't be doing any of the asides or anything like that, where they step aside and they'll do a comment and then go jump back to the scene. But kind of in the same vein as humor as Step Brothers. That's one of my favorite movies of all time. I think it's one of the funniest movies ever made. Very quotable, and there's just not a lot of comedies out there right now like that. And I think there's a huge market for the exact, you know, when you can take sports and comedy and put those two in like Office style comedy and put those two together. I think that there is a real big opportunity to fill that space that I don't see anyone doing right now. Yeah.
No, and it's I think whenever we were talking before, you gave some examples of some other low budget films that ended up being really good.
Yeah.
Peanut Butter Falcon was one of those that I actually really loved.
Love that one.
So I thought that was a cool example of seeing like something that does not cost that much that has a big impact.
Yeah, I mean, when you do a contained script, that just means like you're not doing what's called a bunch of company moves. There's not anything blowing up. It's not a science fiction movie. There's no guns. There's nothing like that. It's just kind of people in rooms is what it's called, people in rooms. And we just kind of go from there. And our biggest set piece is an opening scene where my character, I'll ruin a little bit for you, but my character throws the big interception in the high school championship football game in 1998, and he can't get over it. He's just like a classic Will Ferrell man-child, kind of a baby, just can't get over the fact that happened, ruined his life. He let it ruin his life. So when you talk about resiliency, this guy needs a major comeback. And we have the good ticking clock sequence where it's got to happen today. And so the whole movie takes space over continuous time. We're not jumping back and forth in time. It's just one continuous thing. One day, the whole film takes place.
Nice. Well, I'm going to jump back in time when he is doing that 1998 touchdown. What team is he throwing for? Is that St. T or is that a MacArthur deal?
I don't know. Whoever lets me have the field. We'll see. I guess it would be St. Teresa. MacArthur, we were the worst football team on the face of the planet. I think we won one football game when I played there.
Yeah, no, you came in right after I left, and our senior year we won one game, and it was pretty tough to continue to go to practice every day.
Yeah, it was horrible, but you know what? That year, the only thing I remember about that year is I actually had fun, which sounds weird. I didn't really have fun at St. Teresa, but I had a great, even though we were terrible and we just got the hell kicked out of us. I mean, we didn't lose. We would get routed in games. So it was just almost like Sandlot football.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was silly.
No, we literally, I met with somebody the other day, and it was kind of weird because he wanted to catch up, and he came in, he's like, oh, yeah, I looked up your football and your wrestling record. And I was like, what? And he did. And he's like, yeah, you look like you guys started off really strong. And that last senior year was, I'm like, didn't realize that's still out there in some news archive, but thank you, Internet.
Well, thank you, Internet. And thank you, sir, for being creepy.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. That was talk about a deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
So before the legacy, this is your newest project, but the last one, Andy Somebody, you talked about there's our distributors going out now. So we're hoping sometime this year that we'd be able to see it.
Early this year, first quarter, like May, it'll be out there on some kind of streamer. I'm not quite sure. We'll see what happens. I think it will be in Europe before it's in North America. Again, when you have like 3 different deals signed, it just kind of one company works faster than the other. The North American company I'm really excited about launch releasing. It's a really good company. They're all boutique companies, smaller companies, but they only take like I think 7 to 10 films a year. So they really get behind the films that they like, and they sent us a really, really good email, like warms your heart, because sometimes you don't know if you did anything good or not. Like I was convinced, like, oh my God, you get negative, and like, COVID got in the way. This film, Andy Somebody, was filmed over 4 years. We started, I think, in late 2017, started casting. We got into it in 2018, and 2019, COVID started, and all those restrictions in LA, and we got shut down. And we could only do a couple scenes, and everybody's got to wear a mask, and it's really expensive for insurance, and it was just a whole thing. But yeah, I'm thinking May we'll see it in North America somewhere.
Nice. No, I remember like helping out with the website at that time, and it was like right before COVID. Like just you're gearing up, and they had the concepts. And a lot of it was like the sketchboards, were on the website. Mm-hmm. You guys were slowly going at it, and then lockdown hit, and it was. I can't imagine trying to do any type of a film out there, especially because here in Central Illinois, I've heard of some areas that did not shut down at all, and then talking to you, it was really hard just to go to the grocery store.
If you remember a movie from the 70s called Soylent Green, do you remember that? He used to play on IMBD all the time.
Yep.
it's like a post-apocalyptic, like we're eating, they're making crackers that are made of people, and that's all they have left to eat. It was just one of those movies that's like a 70s gross, scary because it's so could happen kind of thing. And that's what happened with LA, man. Everything shut down. You couldn't go to the grocery store for months. It was horrible.
Yeah, it was the closest thing that we saw to that. 'Cause, I mean, here everybody masked up and they pretty much did what they're supposed to. But we went to Chicago, up to a hospital up there downtown. And at the time, all of the bridges were raised. And so I would be walking around and there was no one on the streets. And you can like stand right in the middle of the road at Michigan Avenue and look straight down. And I was like, this is like a zombie apocalypse right now.
It's creepy, dude. I got on Ventura Boulevard, which is just like that. I mean, it's never, you could be out there at like 3, 4 in the morning and there's cars everywhere. But I was on Ventura Boulevard.
Sure.
And like, you're on a movie set of some kind of horrible post-apocalyptic movie where no one's anywhere.
Well, glad that's all behind us. And I'm sure there's going to be plenty of Facebook, or not Facebook, but different Netflix specials about it, and either documentaries or comedies. I know people are already starting to work it into their routines.
Yeah, I'm good. I lived through it. I don't want to watch it. I won't read a book about it.
You don't want to do it again?
Yeah, I don't need to read. I lived right through that. I even, I called my mom and I was like, hey, I'm going to come visit for a little while. I think that culminated with I was trying to go somewhere in Hollywood, and that was during the riots, too.
Oh, yeah.
George Floyd and all of that. And it was just a scary, crazy, it was a very hot summer. The George Floyd stuff was going on, which is horrific. And the pandemic, it was like just the worst of the worst with everybody. And I had an incident where I was in Hollywood and a guy ran in my car and I was hanging out of my window trying to there was a row of mounted police. And I was like, can you guys help me? And, they couldn't do anything. And I was like, all right, I can't even go to the grocery store. I can't, the riots are happening. This is crazy. I'm going to go to Central Illinois for a little while and hang out.
Where it's a little slower.
Yeah.
No, it was
you appreciate like things because LA is definitely not slow. And so you appreciate kind of the dichotomy of like here, you're just normal. You can hang out, function, but out there when chaos happens, it's weird.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons I think Bloomington Normal was ranked number 1 or 2 as like best places to live post-pandemic, because our industries never really got hit, because even though you might be working at State Farm or insurance or country, you can still work from home, so nothing slowed down that much. But also, it's the largest county in the state, and everyone's got decent sized property, so we're not that close to each other. But yeah, it's something that we appreciated coming back from Chicago. Yeah. We loved it up there. I loved the traffic, loved the energy, loved having the Bears as bad as they are. When we were there, it was the double doink year, so there was hope still. But yeah, getting back down here, like the kids were like, what are we doing? We're going back to the corn. But once they got down here, they're like, no, this is a really good quality of life, quality of place, and they can appreciate the slower lifestyle.
And dude, Bloomington, like, when I came to see you and you're like, hey, drive around, look around. Cause I hadn't been in Bloomington Normal for 20 plus years. I was like,
90s. Yeah.
Like restaurants and all, like downtown looks awesome. I like Bloomington. My brother lives in Bloomington.
Yeah, no, we had our fantasy football draft party from our fraternity from ISU came back down, and it does look nothing like it did back in 97.
No, not at all.
Total revamp.
Bloomington Normal is cool. I like it. I like that town.
Well, the other thing I want to talk about is, which this is pretty impressive before we get into more of the improv and the stand-up stuff, but just your overall experience with CBS, because most people don't know, what that takes to be the writer and to sell that type of stuff. Like, just how did that whole story go down?
Oh God, it's a I'll try to give you the cliff notes. It's a very boring thing kind of, but it's also, it's the hardest thing in the world to do in Hollywood is to break into, especially old media like CBS is. They just have a lot of people in-house. They've got their own writers. They've got their own showrunners. executives, and we were the only in 2019. I finally sold a series to my writing partner Lee Schneller, and we teamed up with Dr. Phil, who has his own studio with CBS, and so he came on as an executive producer, and this guy named Mark Proviziero, Chicago guy, he's Proviziero Odenkirk, that's their company, Bob Odenkirk, Better Call Saul, all of those guys. So we got an hour-long drama, got it through, got it sold, and then the slow creep of COVID starts to hit. And where they only keep their in-house projects. They dumped even a couple of their own just to keep things going. And we were one of the victims. It was either us or The Equalizer. And they kept, because huge name, Queen Latifah. So they kept The Equalizer. It's a very popular show in its own right. But that day I was like, oh my God, I'm going to the store and give me all the alcohol. It was a bad Friday.
It's kind of interesting. I always wondered, people going into COVID, nobody knew what to expect.
Yeah.
It seemed like it happened overnight. I think we're supposed to have like a 2-week flatten the curve deal. And then panic set in. And even for us, I remember, here locally with the breweries and Ferrero, like people didn't know, like, do we invest? Nobody knows what the economy is going to do. Yeah. And I think at that time, I'm assuming it went similar to the chocolate and beer and coffee, like the sales skyrocketed. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure like the streaming services did as well, because people are at home just binging.
Well, it's a weird dichotomy of like no one could film. And you had crazy COVID restrictions, like you couldn't be within a certain amount of like feet. You had to always double mask and so the production side got real tight. Like our show got dumped. The good news is, though, talking about resiliency and not giving up, and like, okay, one really bad thing happened to me. My show got dumped. Now it's over at Fox, and we're gonna hopefully bring that up, and that might be in the works for 23 as well, either there or Hulu. So that I kind of got word up. I think it was 3-4 days ago that's gaining steam again. And so I feel good about that. But, just because you get kicked to the curb with one place, if it's a good idea, you don't let go of those. And
right.
So we just got together and said, okay, COVID killed us. Let's get reborn. Let's go to a different studio, and let's sell this thing.
And even before that, so you probably got your resiliency chops just from, I don't know, was it the stand-up comedy first, or was it the improv, or was that both at the same time?
Both at the same time, but there is nothing more humbling than sucking out loud on stage by yourself. So when you do stand-up and you don't get a laugh, it's only you. You can't blame Tim or whoever to your left or right. Improv, there's usually at least one other person on. I used to do 2-man shows all the time, Chicago and Second City, LA, Hollywood. And we usually do I would do 2-man shows or a big team in Chicago of like 8. So you kind of have some comfort in numbers, but when you do stand up, but the same on the other end, like you crush that night, that was you. That was only you. And so, they both offer up the same thing. One's acting, one's being in a scene, one is, listening a lot. Stand up, you're just kind of going. And then, I love to improvise and stand up too, and just get off onto things and trust that I'll land somewhere good. And if I don't, even because I've done it so much, that's even fun for me. Because, when you get off onto something and it's not really going anywhere, it's just kind of funny to see okay, this road seems like a dead end, but is it? I can spin off somewhere else. Right. I know how to save it. And just you work all those skills. I love doing stuff like that.
So how long did you do, and actually still do you do, stand up in the improv?
Improv has been a while. Stand up I do a little bit, but I'm focused now on screenwriting and movies, television writing. I was attached to the project CBS called Vanishing Point. That was the project that we sold, and I was attached as an executive producer. So it was my show. But yeah, I love movies. I love writing a film and then doing it. This last film, Andy Somebody, it was co-written, but this next film, The Legacy, that I want to do here, hopefully Bloomington Normal.
Right.
That's me. That's all me. I'm going to direct that. I've written it. I did it as a stage play in LA. We got great reviews. There's been a couple people that have come on board as investors already, so we don't have to get every dollar. This is my baby. This is the one I got to do. Above all the other projects I've done, this is the one that I'm most excited about and the one that I believe in the most. And I love the other two projects that I've gotten through, but this is the best work I've ever done.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing more of it. I've got faith that you are going to end up getting this through as long as we get enough investors behind you. So it's another point of doing this and having you on here is to put it out in another medium so more people can see it and gather interest and hopefully set up some type of website or contact information so they can get a hold of you eventually as well. Yeah. But since for personal reasons, because I'm in the process of using this to write books, what is your, writing process? Because I mean, everybody, Stephen King reading his books and everyone's got a different way. I forgot the guy's name already, but he basically goes through this ritual to invite the muse in before he starts writing. So it's like, what's your process to get the creative juices going?
Whatever works. The thing for me is if you try to get outside yourself and write about something that you're not familiar with, that seems to be 101, obviously, but I like writing about stuff that I know. And in comedy, jokes come, they just come. Who knows where that comes from. People want to call it the muse, people want to call it whatever. Usually, your brain works in really weird ways where it'll just latch on to something. So I love to read the news, left, right, middle, I don't care. So I do that. I try to pay attention. One of the greatest things, hero of mine, the first stand-up comedian, Mark Twain, what he said about himself was he was a great noticer of people. So when he would go up and down the Mississippi on riverboats, he was getting his notebook full of characters right there. And I love seeing people. I remember driving up down to St. Louis when I was in Decatur. I met with an investor that came in, and there was a guy on a riding mower in some small town, and I loved it. He was just in I don't care shorts. I don't care who looks at me. Just an older guy and he's got a riding mower, but he's not on grass. He's just kind of riding back and forth over gravel. And I immediately got my notebook out and I just wrote that down. I'm I'm going to put it in the legacy. Just a guy. Hey, what's going on, Tom? Mowing rocks. All right, buddy. You have a great day. Yep. Just things. Yeah.
Larry random things.
Yeah, Larry David writes like that. He takes a notebook everywhere. I don't take a notebook, because we got cell phones now. So I'll write it in, speak it into a notepad. So there's no real process other than the hardest thing for every writer that I've ever talked to, and I talk to television writers, screenwriters, novelists, is getting started. So that comes to something that you and I think, believe in a lot, like discipline. People always start an idea, they get excited, just I got excited when I saw The Karate Kid, 30 years ago. But then am I taking karate classes? Am I going all the way? No. So getting started every day, and then you're just in. And if you're writing from a place of passion, you really, really love, I loved writing The Legacy. It wasn't a strain for me. It's man, I remember the guy that hung out at high school 2 years after he graduated. I remember the guy that couldn't let go of being the high school football hero. We all saw those guys. I remember seeing the teacher that went too long in their career and really didn't want to be there anymore. And I wrote all these people in, and these are all people that I saw early on, MacArthur, all of our friends, and just kind of keeping that Rolodex in your mind of pictures of people and how they are and what are their traits, and then building, tree of traits off of that and just letting it go wherever it goes. But like Hemingway said, all writing is rewriting. You got to trim it down. You got to mold it. You have to understand the flow of a scene, beginning, middle, and end. Somebody's got to want something. Somebody has to be. You never get what you want, and you've got to understand intuitively. For me, and I've read several books on it, so it just kind of helped me build my intuitive nature of like, when does Act 1 stop? How do you spin that into Act 2? And Act 2, you got to have a break that spins you into a different. So you're really writing 3 different movies. If you can think of Act 1 here, then it reverses to Act 2, and then that'll reverse into Act 3. So there are 3 different movies. And once you understand that, and you understand, the page 11 problem, this movie needs to tell me what it is by page 11, or no one's going to watch it. So anytime you watch a movie, stop it around minute 9 to 11. You can tell if there's a rookie screenwriter or a movie that had too many cooks in the kitchen. And this is just, I don't know, man, like, what do you love to do? I love to just sit there, have a cup of coffee, maybe I'll smoke a cigar, and I'll just be in it. Sometimes it's, times, other times it's great. You just never know. It's like golf. One day I'll be out there, I'm chopping, I think I'm great, and the next day, like, I'm useless.
Terrible.
Yeah.
So with this one, was it anything, because I've heard stories like, John Hughes came up with, what was it, Ferris Bueller in like a half a day. Did this one, like, since you did live the bulk of it, did you already know it and then you're just trying to fine tune it?
I already knew it. I knew I wanted to do it as a stage play. That was the first thing I did when I got to LA. And then I knew I wanted to build it out. We almost sold it to Comedy Central, but another story. They invited us on the Comedy Central stage in Hollywood. And I was like, oh my God, don't forget that you were on the stage. This is great. I can't, oh my God.
Right.
And then they bought another TV show. The 3, I can't remember it, but it's 3 guys in the office. Workaholics.
Yeah, Workaholics.
Workaholics. Yep. Like, no! No!
That's a funny show, too, yeah. Yep.
And so it was just another, it's a great show. I love that show. So it was just another opportunity. It's like, okay, great. All right, that didn't work. I just got into Hollywood. I had my heart broken immediately. I thought you had to wait 3 years to get your heart broken. No, Jeremy Evans gets his heart broken minute
right off the bat.
So I was like, you know what? I'm putting this on the back burner. I'm going to do a lot of stand-up. I'm going to do a lot of improv. I want to develop this from a TV show. We took it from a play to a TV show. Then I started adapting it for film. But I knew I needed experience, and I wanted to do a lower budget thing. Andy Somebody. And I was like, I need experience. I want to be on set. So I got myself on to sets. I, become friends with famous comedians, managers or whoever. And like, hey, can you get me into, Last Man Standing? I want to watch Tim Allen work. And they don't. It's weird. The Midwest guy in me is like afraid to ask that as if something's going to be wrong. So you got to kind of beat that out of you and just go like, hey, I just want to hang out. I'm not going to embarrass anybody. I'll just, I want to watch people work.
That's the Midwest nice, and it's something that I don't know if I've always had that, but going to Chicago, you kind of respect the hustle that's there, and then coming back down, that hustle scares people, so you got to tone it back a little bit.
Well, I just think, don't you think like both things just kind of become a part of you, and like you situationally, I like just talking to somebody. That Midwest will never. I don't ever want that to leave because people in LA.
No, not at all.
Yeah, people in LA, that stereotype is true. Everybody's type A. Everybody just wants to know what you can do for them, and that's where your soul kind of gets sucked out of you, and you're like, God, I just want to make a couple good friends just so I can be a person. You just got to be balanced. But don't you think that you just got to kind of
No, it's for sure. You don't want to lose that. And even, talking to Chris Dowd, he was talking about down in Florida, and they will hire everybody from the Midwest just because of the work ethic. That's you say what you mean what you say. And they will, anybody that wants to go down there, jobs are everywhere because they love Midwesterners.
The hardest working people. And when you say I came from Chicago, Second City, I'll let you on my stage. I got on stage as just saying that. Like I got on,
Ah.
yeah, just like because they know that you're not a guy that's flapping. Even when I wrote for Joan Rivers, a terrible TV show, but Fashion Police. I wrote jokes for her.
Ah.
Like, oh, you're Second City guy? Yeah, sure.
Carries. It's got clout.
Yeah, I mean, they're what you're talking about. Like, people from the Midwest know how to work. And like, look, dude, my mom, drove a truck for UPS her whole life. Like, am I going to let her, work harder than I can work? I don't think so. Like, I couldn't be like,
Right.
You know what? I can't write today. And my mom was out there in snow, making sure.
Yeah. No, it puts things into perspective. Well, along that lines, I wanted to ask, since you did play football, how much of the athlete side, the competitive side, goes into like the resilience or the work ethic?
A hell of a lot. I know you got this too, because even just talking to you, like we can both feel it. Like I don't like to get beat at anything. I don't let that make me, an a-hole. I don't need that I don't need to be a jerk, but like I don't like to lose at anything. I don't like to get beat. And if I get beat at something, like, all right, why? And you look internally, you do some self-reflection. Okay, all right, how did this happen? Let's try not to have it happen again. Was it just a fluke? Was I not the right look? I remember I auditioned for a commercial that I absolutely thought I had. It was going to be a nice one for me that paid a lot of money. And I went through 3 auditions. So I was like, oh God, we're almost to the finish line here. And somebody else got it. And I beat myself up really bad because it was, I won't name the company, but it was an insurance commercial, which would have been like recurring.
Sure.
And it would have been good for me, but I don't care. There's nothing artistic about a commercial. Their messages and their only look, you got to look a certain way. So I was like going over all of it, but I really gave myself a hard time about that. It's like, man, you could have been thousands of dollars, blah, blah, blah. But,
right.
You just got to keep you got to widen the screen and go, okay, what are my goals? I'm trying. What's my why? Why do I get out of bed? It's not for commercials. It's to make films and television.
Right. Yep. Yeah, and you actually touched on a lot of things there. So one, the competitive side, I discovered this probably in the last 2 or 3 years. I hate losing more than I like winning, if that makes sense.
Great quote from Moneyball, and it's 1,000% true. And I know you and I share that. Like, to get beat, like I just feel like Seinfeld once said, like, when I tell a joke that doesn't work, I feel like I'm wearing my dad's suit coat and like the sleeves are too long, and I just that's how like I totally agree with that. Like losing sucks. It's terrible.
It's part of the passion to me is like in the process. So like I'm writing a book. I do struggle to sit down, have that routine, have that discipline. Like I can think about it all day and I love talking about it, which is why I'm trying this technique to get out of my head and onto paper. And you're following right along the lines and hitting every topic with the drive, direction, and discipline. So you're totally lining up to the theory that framework will help you accomplish anything. But yeah, the losing side to me, it's, you learn a lot from it. And even that 1 year when we both won one football game, like you really figure out who you are to keep going back to practice for those guys, for your coach, knowing you're going to get your ass kicked this Friday.
Absolutely. And I thought like, and every week, Pat, I thought like, I'm the quarterback. I'll find a way. Nope. we lost again. But also too, what do you think about this? Like, there's 2 things that are coming to mind. Like people, I think sometimes, and I see this a lot in LA, where people like talking's enough. They talk about a thing that they are going to do. They're never going to do it. One, and the other side, like the fear. Like when I first got on stage in Chicago, I'll never forget it. I was so scared. I thought like, I got to come in there and like, do a Chris Farley belly flop and like let these people know who I am. And I swear to God, the teacher 5 minutes after we all sat down that first day of improv class, it was like, thank God none of you ran in here and jumped on the stage and acted like an idiot. That's not what we do here. And I was like, oh my God, you're talking about me.
Like, oh my.
That just because I was scared. So fear, I think, keeps people from doing things too. You know what I mean? Like, what do you think about that?
No, I know for a fact that's true. I mean, even just the public speaking, it's, most people are more afraid of that than they are getting shot. Like it's crazy, where fear does hold people back. And honestly, with this, it was paralysis by analysis. Like I give speeches, I've done award-winning speeches, and I'm always like, I'll start my own podcast and I'll do it. And I just overanalyzed the content, what I'm going to say, who I'm going to have on, and the format. And eventually, like, you know what, you just got to go and stay within pocket. Like, don't get too overextended, but try new things, knowing you're going to fail and learn from it. So but I agree. The fear, hell, when I started Toastmasters, I would literally talk for 30 seconds and sit down, and I would just keep going back. It was bad. Like, I'd say my piece and sit down, and I'd just be sweating. Like, holy crap.
I remember I got on a really good stage in Santa Monica, California, and I ended up doing stand-up there for a long, long time. But it was like only television writers, only touring comics that were allowed on the stage. I was the one exception because I did an improv show there before those guys would come on. And so I would talk to this guy, Scott Shannon, very good friend of mine now, and I'd be like, Scott, come on. He's like, yeah, I mean, you're funny, but like, do you do stand-ups? Like, well, I need a place, like I need you do Friday and Saturday nights, like 2 shows. Like, he's like, yeah, I knew he kind of kept waffling, but I could tell all he wanted was a reason to let me on. He wasn't a bad guy. He was just like, I don't want to send, people spend $20-something, they're buying beer. They don't want a clunker, going up there like, so hi. I was like, yeah. But I remember he let me on a stage, and I swear to God, dude, I did an 8-minute set, which is nothing. That's just like a newbie, 8 minutes. Or, the show was like a rotating, so everybody did 8 minutes. So, but 8 minutes you should be able to do if you have jokes. I was sweating so bad that when I took my hat off, it poured down my face. I mean, it was coming.
Oh, man.
And I was like, my shirt, and you could hear people in the audience going, what's wrong with it? You could hear the liquid. Oh, God. I got off stage, and Scott, God bless the guy, he just put an arm around me. He's like, yeah, dude, work on your jokes and come back. And I was like, all right, man, I'm sorry. I was apologizing profusely. I came back and then started, getting better and better. But, like, I'll never forget that. Like, even the comics look at you like you just murdered somebody in front of their family.
Right.
Like, get away from me. It's humbling.
Yeah, I've yet to experience that. It is something I've always wanted to try, because I've done humorous speech. Like, I actually won a local competition for humorous speech, which is, nice. I think, different because it's scripted and more of a story. But even then, we were talking before we started recording, what you think's funny, and you say it, and then all of a sudden nothing happens, and then you say something else you don't think's funny, and then they start laughing. It just throws off the rhythm.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember I was in Oakland. I was in Oakland, California, doing a show at a small hotel banquet room. It was like, I don't know, it was just tiny. And if they had the people packed in, I was like excited because I was the headlining act. I was doing an hour that night. And a woman, I was like 10 minutes into my hour-long set. A woman walks in who was, give or take, 137 years old. And she had a gown on. Yeah. She had a gown on like she just broke out of prison. Like a hospital gown on. And nothing else. And I'm going through, I'm like, she's coming around. She's got a cane. Dude, she's walking. And I'm like, oh, God, why? What is going to happen? And she gets to the front, and there's a break, and I'm talking, and, there's just like that conversation goes down. And I heard this lady go, yeah, and I was like, what? And she goes, do you got any gimp jokes? I was like, man, and I just, off the cuff, it's not even funny saying conversationally, but I was like, man, did somebody plant you here?
Right.
The crowd just lost it.
Like are you getting punked?
Yeah. I was like, where's Jamie Kennedy? Who put her here?
Yeah.
I kind of went with that. And like, you could see like the other guys like talking off to the side, the guys running the show, and they had to come and get this lady who I swear to God broke out of a hospital.
Okay.
Anyway.
Was that at a hotel, you said?
It was it was in a hotel ballroom, but the ballroom was really, really small. So everybody, like all the tables were cramped. It's a great room for a comedian.
Packed in.
Packed in. They had it packed in that night. I was doing the hour. The two guys that went up before me were good, which the room was hot when I got up. And it's always a challenge when the people in front of you are good, because sometimes the audience can be
right.
like, I'd rather have that guy. So you got to go up there and make sure that everybody knows that you're here now. And that lady did that to me, and Jeremy back in Santa Monica would have been like, I just would have like put some, dropped a few in my diapers because like I would have not known. But it's one of the weirdest moments in my stand-up career.
But I think that proves the other point when it comes to discipline. It's one thing to stay your course, but you have to be able to reflect and actually, as a quarterback, you were audible, like in the middle of it all, like be able to do that. And I think people can relate to that. And that's when it's more, well, that's why the improv side, like it's funny because it's not natural. And it's one of those moments that you catch. That's why it's so hilarious.
You're able to your brain kind of splits in two, like, okay, I've got my set, but this is happening. And how do I make that funny? So the more times you do it, that how do I make this funny just goes to natural. So like, just like you're talking to a normal guy and like, another mistake I see people make is like, yeah, you should do stand-up comedy. Like you're funny to your friends, and those people, they go up and they die once and they never come back. Because you think about it, Seinfeld said this, like everybody's funny to their friends. Like we know each other. You want to laugh.
Right.
You're out trying to have a good time with each other. And, so like your brain just kind of splits in two after you get used to it and you feel yourself calm because you're like in control and you know how to make that funny. And that's when you know, like, oh my God, like this is fun now because I got the Rolodex, but I can break away from that really quick and then come right back. And the audience hates it when they see you think or you look down and you don't know where you're going. It's like a substitute teacher. They hate that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when going back even a little further, you were, again, funny amongst friends, but like high school age, did you know that this is what you wanted to do?
No, I had no idea. And again, I grew up kind of weird. Like, my brother played sports, so I was like, I like sports. They're fun. And, I played football. I played junior college football. Like, I was good. Not great. I'm under 6 foot, so when I got to junior college, I was like, all right, I can't see over the line. This isn't going to work.
Yeah. And this is going to hurt. Yeah.
Yeah, this is going to hurt. And, for any, like, young person, like, not to get too weird, but anybody young watching this, if they do watch it, it's okay to not know what you want to do for a while. Like, I came back home I played ball up in Rockford, Illinois. And I just immediately knew, like, I'm making a mistake. I don't want to be here. I had a tragedy that happened, and I was, like, kind of still reeling from that. And so I came home, and I just, unfortunately, like, I just kind of hung out and did stuff that, like, go out to the bar, drink. Because because really what that was like fear manifesting in a bad way. Like, I don't know what I want to do. I had no direction, I just was like floundering until I swear to God, I saw Chris Farley. Do you remember those old biographies where they used to get on the biography, the Inside the Actor Studio, I think it was.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So Chris Farley was on one of those, and I love Chris Farley. So I just decided to watch it. And he got his start at Second City, Chicago, and Improv Olympic in Chicago. And I was like, I literally had one of those moments where it just hit me in the face of like, that sounds fun. Like, it just sounds fun. Like, I've never heard of improv. I never thought about doing stand-up comedy. I knew all the jokes, and I didn't make the connection to like, hey, idiot, why don't you go do that? Because like in a small town, nobody from here that I know of did stand up at that time or
nope.
So when I saw that, I got on my computer back in the dial-up days and just went and signed up and just said, forget this. I'm doing nothing. I'm just going to sign up for a class. I'm going to go. I have no idea what this is going to be. Didn't even because you couldn't, there was no videos, there was no YouTube back in like 2001 or 2.
Right.
2002. So like, I didn't, there was no YouTube. I didn't have anything to look at, and I just showed up.
Yeah, it's crazy how those instances happen. That's the beauty of having you on, that resilient story, because I think one of the purposes of this podcast, it is for those younger versions of us. Like I look back at us, back in the 20s, and how many nights in the Lincoln Lounge, 2 a.m. just wasting. I want to say wasting time, because it was great. I look back at the lack of responsibility and the friendships we made, but the total, I don't know. It's just, I don't say waste of potential, but it's like everybody knew they could be more. And I had a similar story where with me, it was watching Good Will Hunting. So that came out in 97.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there watching Matt Damon, and there's this kid, and he's hanging out with all of his townie friends. I'm like, that's me. And seeing like, how smart he was. Not that I'm on that level by anything, but I knew that I never tried in school. Like school was a way for me to get on a football field, and that was it.
Correct.
And eventually, going back to Richland, 1 to 2 classes a semester while I bartended, getting straight A's and straight A's through Millikan, and finishing up at Notre Dame. It's amazing if you apply yourself, but there was that fear of I'm not smart. And that's the dumbest thing. And, for anyone that's out there that isn't that, like, smart, it's all relative. Like there's people that are really good at trigonometry or philosophy. And, at that time, our thing was we could go in a whole nother direction and talk about the Bears for days, but it's like we wasted our time on stuff that wasn't helping our career.
No, I see you were still doing stuff. Like I floundered for a few years, man. Like I didn't, even my mom was like, dude, what are you doing? Like you're just going out. Like, is that all? Is that it? Like, you're just going to be one of those, not that I'm taking a crap on anybody, but like, do you want to just be that guy? And some of the bad traits I had at 21 got into the legacy of like, not that I was going hanging out to high school or anything, but of just like being sick and not knowing how to move on can cripple a person. And if you don't get out of that somehow, whatever the trigger is, for me, it was Chris Farley. For you, it was like, because what you said about like thinking you're stupid, I thought I was a moron because I barely got by in high school.
Same.
People called me stupid. Yep. I just believed it. Even if like, I'll say this because who cares? But like, I had a dad that wasn't very nice, called me some names when I was a younger guy. And you just believe that. It's shocking what you just think is true. What you just, you're calling me dumb, or I feel dumb. That just must be the truth. And then I realized like, it's just because somebody says it doesn't mean it's fact. Like, it sounds asinine now as a 43-year-old guy. But that also helps you like spring into what you actually want to be. And like, well, screw this. I can go down the road and like, do nothing but drink and hang out with the boys. And that's Good Will Hunting. That's fine. But I always felt like I can do something more. And that's what I felt.
No, and I had that too. And I remember, hanging out with Matt Cardinal some late night, and I'm like, we're like literally like yelling at each other, like we're better than this. Like, what are we doing? And he did the same thing because it was just late nights in a bar, hanging out. I was bartending at the time, and just like this, I missed those conversations. It was great conversations and deep thought, but we were not applying ourselves whatsoever. That dude goes back and ends up getting a master's at the U of I. Like it's the same thing. There's probably just that hazy window of 5 years of the untraditional student, I would say. You find your way, but it took a hell of a lot longer than most people.
Same thing for me. It's just like you got to push through that. You got to get over the fear, and just like I did, I just went and signed myself up for a class, having no clue what improvisational theater is. And for a long time, I embarrassed myself. I thought I was funny. No. I was terrible. And I even had people get mad at me, like, you don't know what you're doing. Like, we took theater classes where I went to DePaul. I went to East Coast, schools. And, like, there's a lot of really good – because improv is all about intellect and being quick on your feet. And, I was just an athlete. I was an athlete that didn't really read. And it taught me, like, you should care about other things other than sports and, hanging out. It just got me out of that. Like, where I actually read a book. Dude, up until that point, I honest to God, I don't know that I ever read more than like 2 books. Like, it's shocking how, it was just all like waking up slowly out of this thing and like, oh my God, I don't do this. I don't know how to do that. What have I been doing? And so, yeah.
Right.
And failing forward, it's okay to like suck for a little while. Like, I remember I worked on, when I first got to Chicago, I worked on a liquor truck with the guys, and I loved it. And some of these guys are in there too, because they were like super fans, bear guys, talked like that, real heavy Chicago accent. Jeremy, you gonna write with me today, guy? And I loved it because I just got to Chicago. I was a young guy. I was just like, all right, I need some money. I can do this manual labor. Great, let's do it. And one of the guys, he called it sucking out loud. And it was like, it's with me forever. It's like, sometimes you got to suck out loud before you sound like music.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Yeah.
And I'd hate to throw shade at our past and friends and everything, but I think it still holds true today that group, I don't want to say monkeys in a barrel because you're not pulling each other down, but it is a comfortable blanket. Like, we're all in this together, and especially I don't want to knock Decatur, but it's a community that it's heavily blue collar, but it's like there's a sense of pride that we're all stuck here. And that becomes this like, no, we're not up here. We're here, and we're comfortable being here. And you went on like, I'm going to give Chicago a shot, and I'm like, I'm better than this. And eventually I went to Chicago as well, up to Tinley Park. So I think there is some comfort in friends. And at some point you do got to walk away in order to step outside your comfort zone, to grow. But I think it's comfortable just to hang out with those. Cause like you were doing the beer truck service thing. I did roofing. I did landscaping.
Yeah.
I was even talking to some guys about going on full time with them. And they were just like older guys, hilarious guys, but they're like, no, get your ass back to community college. I'm like, really? Like, you guys make a good living. And they're like, no, go to school, use your brain.
The guys on the
worked out well.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not throwing shade at anybody. It's all about like, because I don't blame anybody other than myself for not knowing what to do. And when I say blame, I use that lightly because it's like I was immature as hell. And that makes me feel ashamed of myself a little bit. Like, when I think back of like, man, you wasted a lot of time. I don't blame anybody else. Like, it was my choice to go to a bar. It's always, I can't be talked into anything if I don't want to do it. But I really wanted to do that stuff.
Right. No, it's fun.
Yeah. But the guys on the truck were the very opposite of me. They didn't want me to stick around. They're like, you suck at this. Like, because I just like, it just didn't, my path wasn't ever going to be, roofing or anything. And, I don't care what anybody does for a living, but I just always felt like, man, I really like this other thing and I want to quietly get into it. And I didn't even tell anybody here that I was going up to, because I was traveling on Sundays to go up there. I didn't say a word about it because I was scared, man. Is this going to work? And will I like it?
Yeah. No, I thinking back then, I don't remember you doing that at all. And then all of a sudden you were gone and you're coming back and doing your own improv shows. And I was like, oh, damn, like he's on stage.
I fell in love with it, man. Like, and back in Chicago in those days, this theater's not there anymore. They moved it out of Wrigleyville. It was right across the street from Wrigley Field. It was in a basement. It was dark. It was dirty. It was just like, tables and chairs, and they packed it in there every night. You could go to Improv Olympic on a Wednesday night at 11 p.m. and it's packed. And it was just, I'm 23 and I'm having a great time. I'm sucking out loud a little bit, but I'm also slowly getting better, getting my feet a little bit. Started to kind of do a little bit of stand up and just feeling it out. It doesn't mean just because you find something, like, you don't have to take off immediately, man. I'm 43 and 2019 is my first big sale to a studio.